why don't you kick it off with like a little bit of origin story, or like what are you solving? You can kind of tell whatever you think is best.
Sure. So co-founder Dan and I, he's based out of the UK, so he's not here today. We worked together since about 2006. We were at Mediaplex, and then we joined Media Math around the same time in 2010. I built out the team that was customizing the platform for clients, and Dan was head of the core platform APIs and UIs. So we saw firsthand the challenges that most marketers were actually having, not only accessing a platform, like an enterprise DSP, but using it and making it do the things that they needed it to do, whether it's automation or integrations. And we had, around 2014, 2015, a few years at the company, had established solid relationships with the founders. We approached them with an ambitious idea of making an easier to access, easier to use version of Media Math. Help them increase the total addressable market. Media Math squarely focused on the enterprise. And Dan and I had a solid relationship. We'd always been kind of tinkering in the background, and we raised a tiny seed fund from the founders to tackle that problem. Nights and weekends for quite some time. About 4 years before I left Media Math, built up the business over about 4 years. They were very kind to us and helped us incubate while we were there. And then Dan actually joined us full-time at the end of 2023. So it took a long time. We didn't raise much capital at all. Effectively bootstrapped it to where we are today. So have most of control still, but we took a long and winding path to get here.
Well, I kind of talked about that earlier, is like the business, you can come up with a solution, you can see the answer, but then moving actual clients over to some type of new technology to buy something, again, that's technology is always highly valued because it's very hard to move people to use a different one or to like teach them how to use it. So I think that's cool, a great story, because it's not only that it took time for you to get scale so that you could like jump off, but also just a beautiful story of like, in every business, if you want to start something, like you could use somebody who helps or somebody who's interested in helping you that has kind of a position. You brought it to them. They were like, we're not servicing those people. And it's like, that's a perfect match. And it takes time, but it's cool to see that. Again, I mentioned Paul. Hey, Paul. But everybody has like somebody who helped them and some time doing it somewhere. And I think that that's really cool to see that, like, can't do it alone. You got to have some type of team. You could maybe do the founding job alone, but something's got to happen to get a company really off the ground.
Definitely, it was pretty. I don't want to say it's unique, but definitely appreciate the relationship that Dan and I have had and we built over the years, and would not have made it through the last 18 months of evolution of Adlib, going from easy to access, easy to use version of Media Math to what we are today, which is a buying platform, sits on top of everything. We've done that in about 14 months because of the team and the relation. As I say, we're like an old married couple at this point. We just kind of get along, nod, and know what each other are going to do, and that has meant pretty much everything.
And that's again, we'll it's about 10 years for me. I think there's different stages a company is in when some of you are a little bit younger in terms of your story, I guess I would say. But that's great. That was great. Thanks, Mike. Casey, why don't you tell us a little, you could focus on product or origin story, whatever you think's good.
Yeah. So same thing, like I have a co-founder, Joe Hall. Couldn't have done any of this without him. So having someone I trust who kind of encourages you to take the jump was super important. But I'll tell a story about why we're called Spaceback, because it's so core to our founder's story, and story I don't get to tell very often because it's not doesn't exactly relate to what we do now, but it's kind of fun. So I was at a Thanksgiving dinner in 2016 at my aunt's house, and my aunt starts, everyone's talking about what they do and how work's going and stuff, and she just kind of doesn't like that I work in AdTech and doesn't like pop-up ads. And I've never done anything with pop-up ads, but I start talking to her about, like we support free, we've all probably done this. We're like, we revert back to what do you do? Like, well, we try to make the internet free, or and that's kind of the easy answer to get out of. But for my aunt this time, I figured try to do something that was fun and interesting with AdTech that took advantage of all of this useless knowledge and systems I had access to and everything. And I started retargeting my aunt with pictures of her dogs. And everywhere she went on the internet, she would see pictures of her dogs, and she was so confused how I did it, and I'd spend literally 40 cents a day and just homepage of Yahoo, like everywhere she'd go on the internet. And privacy people here, like earmuffs. I'm sure I wasn't supposed to be doing this.
Retargeting pool of one, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, pool of one, but an anonymous pool of one.
Anonymous one.
But after doing this with my aunt, I started retargeting my brother. For some reason, doesn't like Zac Efron. He worked at Wells Fargo at the time, and I would just target him with pictures of Zac Efron doing modeling poses and stuff. And all of his Wells Fargo coworkers were like, "Man, you must really like Zac Efron," because they'd see him on his screen all the time. And I felt like so powerful by just doing AdTech stuff. And it became really fun, and I got obsessed with what's the difference between ads and content. And when I'd use the infrastructure, and the publishers are getting paid, and they could be whitelisted, blacklisted, targeted, like using the exact same infrastructure to deliver content to people in traditional ad units. So Spaceback, even the name Spaceback comes from take your space back. And what can we do with the ad tech space that is more interesting than standard ads? So kind of fast forward to what we do today. It's not, we don't build tech to help you, troll your brother. But we do help brands turn social media experiences into ad units, which we really discovered through kind of this authentic curiosity of what can we put in ad units that's more interesting, and found that social media is an environment where the line between what's ads and what's content is a little bit blurry. So when we bring social media experiences outside of the walled gardens and into ads, we get much higher engagement rates, purchased, pretty much every kind of KPI we measure. And we think that's because we're effective at combating banner blindness and kind of playing in this kind of, with that blurry line of, what's the difference between ads and content.
That was awesome, Casey. Thank you. And I think that's knowing about your company and about how you transform, because brands make so much social content. So display ads or banner ads traditionally are, creative teams don't want to update them that much because they're not looked at as the most effective way to promote your brand sometimes. And I think that your company being we can take all your social and just keep making them, you're 7-8 years into it, but when I saw what you were doing, I was like, that is some automation in the creative space that's really smart. And it's funny because now with AI, we didn't talk about AI. We talked about some AI, but AI is the hot term. What AI? And you were already, again, it's not artificial intelligence, right? You were just kind of morphing the units, but man, you open up the ability for them to iterate. Social team that's making all the content, just iterate on. It's just a really good thing. And I don't want to say it's artificial intelligence, but again, it's how you apply any intelligence can be done really well. So I think that was great. And I didn't know the story, so thank you. Luke, are you still awake with me? Yeah. And I would say you're both of you get fit into a little bit of a younger company. So tell us a little bit about how you started, maybe a little bit more about why than what you've. Not that you guys have both done some good stuff, but whatever you want there.
What are you trying to say?
No, it's young. Hey, my first year was tough, so I think that's normal.
Yeah, we've only been going for 6 months, so yeah, we're pretty new. But I also have a co-founder. She's actually giving birth hopefully next week, so she's not here.
That's a reasonable excuse.
Yeah, so no, I worked at Group M for 15 years in London and Sydney, and then I worked for a startup ad tech company in London called Adlib. And I worked with Georgia, my co-founder, since probably for the last 10 years. She worked on the pub side, on the supply side. She set up InSkin, which was acquired by Azerion, and then ran as the Azerion business in JPAC. So we have known each other for a while, and effectively we, over the years, wanted to, at some point, set up our own company that kind of married those two sides together. And moving back to Australia, we kind of realized that there's a forgotten part of the market really in the sort of independent advertising sort of agency scene, as well as the brands who don't have agencies, who have a small marketing team that I guess want to access, digital out of home and CTV. So we set up Cake.Shop to kind of plug the gap in that area where a lot of the large AdTech players don't want to service smaller businesses, and a lot of the holdcos won't take brands that don't spend a certain level of money. So we realised that that's not just an Australian issue, that that's also in New Zealand, India, Singapore, Hong Kong, US market, UK. So we're based in Sydney, so a great city to be based in, but we're a global business. So we're starting to scale, and it's only been 6 months, but we feel there's a product market fit. I guess for now, both our kind of backgrounds, you realize that product market fit is a big part of the scene, and we wanted to make sure that we had a flexible product set that could be malleable to the clients that we work with a super flexible commercial model, which is transparent. That's the other part to what we do. So we disclose all our margins, etc., which resonates with a lot of smaller independent businesses that are also strapped on their margins and profitability, and especially in the economic headwinds that we're in globally in our market as well. It's something that we feel is a good fit for where we're going and helps answer a lot of the problems in our industry. That's Cake.Shop. It's only 6 months, so hopefully in the next 6 months I'll have more news. But going well so far.
And I think well said. And listen, one thing that we all do is some of like the service side. I mean, I would bet most of the people in this room deal with like the service side of this business, dealing with a publisher that needs some tag issue or some, or a buyer that's something that they're running. And it's interesting, like the service side of this is where there's an endless amount. There's an endless amount of work. They're always going to need help. The best buyers are always going to need some help from some people. So I think it's just interesting when you see a clear trend. It's not a trend here. It's a trend in the whole room. It's like, we can understand the technology. We can utilize what we believe is best. We have cool features. We have cool plugins. We have different companies that do different things. But I need the ads to go live on Sunday. And I think that's something that you just do. You're just part of the founders, just part of the young company. Let's go. Like, let's do what it takes. Jared, why don't you tell us about Dial-Up? Thank you.
Sure. So like you said, our story is a little bit younger. We're a few months into sort of, our launch. But I've been in the media space for 15 plus years, both on the sales side, running media teams, and I think a lot of us can maybe, align with this thought, hopefully, or agree. There's a little bit of a transition going on in media, particularly on the agency side. And so, for lots of different reasons, but we're really focused on trying to sort of, again, build like a new sort of operating model with a lot more expertise, a lot more firepower, so to speak, in terms of being able to solve problems for brands and clients. And in order to do that, you have to build efficiency within the operating model. I think the challenge that a lot of agencies in particular, my experience is not on the holdco side, but mostly with smaller and mid-sized independent agencies, is that these companies are run, frankly, not to denigrate anybody, but they are run by account people that don't necessarily put a lot of emphasis into how to run things efficiently from an operations perspective. And if anybody's worked with an agency lately, I think we've all run into, I'm bandwidth constrained, and I can't sort of address your problem or your question today, and I don't necessarily even have the right expertise in-house to do so. And the only way that you can solve that problem, to be able to have the right people and the right expertise in the house and still get paid the same fees, because no brand is trying to pay more fees to their agency, is to make the model a lot more efficient on the back end. So anyway, that's what we're after. We're a few months in. Part of founding a company is right place, right time as well. Like, this is very much a timing thing from my perspective. I think, again, there's this transition happening in the media ecosystem and within agencies right now where these concepts, I think, are certainly resonating with the folks that we're talking about, but it's also finding that right partner, right? I had a lot of these ideas kicking around in my head for months, and I was consulting with different agencies and different folks. I wasn't going to do this on my own. That's kind of scary, But I, crossed paths with a colleague that I worked with years ago, and, here we are. We're doing it.
And that's just got to be a moment where you're like, we're gonna go ahead and do this now. This is time. No, and that's
Let's roll up our sleeves.
and yeah,
That's
and
what they
it's
say.
there's ups and there's downs. There's wins, there's losses. It's just the nature of starting any business, just like anything that you do in life. So that was great. Thank you. I think one thing that well, again, we're all different period in it. But I'm going to kick it back to you, Mike. And I would say a little bit about advice to another founder. You got somebody who comes to, well, there's some younger founders here, but why don't we say you at some, college event and some kid comes up, he just graduated, he's like, I'm going to start a company. What would you tell him? What's your advice? Understanding that we all learn a different way. What do you got? You got any advice to people thinking about doing it?
Oh, man. There's 3 ways that companies are going to buy your product. You're going to save them time, you're going to save them money, or you're going to make them more money. Focus on those 3 things. Find something that they're doing already that's costing them too much time, too much resources, and offer them a better way. Stay away from the inventing something and trying something entirely new. It's very difficult to get people to buy something new, businesses that are already ingrained in technology. That's much more difficult than solving for one of those key 3 problems. There's a lot of opportunity now to build on your own, so you don't need to hire some crazy outsourced team. You could build something in Excel, or Google Sheets. Our first product was Google Sheets, right? You don't need to, and don't. That's the other piece. Don't build until you have your first client that's ready to give you money. That's a big mistake, right? You're going to spend all this money, you're going to raise a bunch of money, build something, and then go try to sell it. Nobody wants it. So what do you do then? You're going to go back to raise a bunch of money, start the other way, sell something, figure out what people are willing to pay for, solve that as manually or auto-manually as you can with the existing tools, and then invest in the technology to power that based on where the money is actually coming from and where you're adding value.
Perfect. That was great. And I agree with you. It's like you gotta. How much do you know about the business you're going to be in? How much do you know about the business you're going to be in? Even when you're tangentially from close to the business, like how much do you know about the business you're in? You can't know until you're in it. So just one client will teach you a lot. I think that's good. Casey, what do you got? Some type of you got a college kid. Tell me some advice.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just kind of build on what you said there. Product market fit is so critical, like the thing to focus on. There's so many things about starting a business that I thought would be really hard that actually ended up being really easy. Like little things like payroll and stuff like that, set it up and it just kind of happens. I have no idea how people started businesses 15 years ago before Carta and Gusto and it's actually really easy to do these things that used to be really, really hard. I think that makes the product market fit thing even harder because it's easier for everyone to start a company. So there's I'd say more important than ever of finding that first customer and making sure you're building for that customer. And even if that customer is going to lead to only 2 other customers or 3 other customers who are invested in your product roadmap, or at least for technology companies, having people who are paying you money and invest in your product roadmap is what's going to drive you for the first year or 2 of getting to a place where you can go to market and hopefully have a scalable operations and scale your revenue growth. But finding product market fit with a few customers who are going to lean into what you're building because not just because you're solving a problem but they believe in the problems you're going to solve with them. I feel like that's how you earn an opportunity to be a bigger partner than just a vendor.
Totally agree. And that makes sense. And it's like it's the inching kind of along and getting it to work and seeing where you are as it moves, I think is key. Luke, knowing you're a little bit younger in the story, you got any moments that you were like, oh, this might actually work, or oh, we might be onto something. Can you tell us a little about that maybe?
Yeah. Well, the first client we had decided not to pay us. So
It's often that's the
so
story,
that was
by the way.
that was
Yeah.
the first problem I had. But when we knew we had something, was the second client was all in, and I think when you've got that feedback, and to a point where I sit in the agency now, so they almost invite you into their business to understand more about what they're doing and how you can help. I think that's a good indicator that we're onto something. And then the other thing is word of mouth. So we don't do marketing at the moment. We do a bit of PR here and there, but it's word of mouth. It's recommendations. So that's how we've I guess we've grown. It's through word of mouth. I think that's probably the best kind of nod to that you're doing the right thing when you're getting recommended. So yeah, that would be the indicators that we're doing well. I was just going to say that the only advice I have, being 6 months in, is you just got to do it, because there's never a good time to start a company, particularly not 2024 when you're moving your family from one side of the world to the other, and your co-founder's pregnant. So there's never a good time to start it. So if anyone is thinking about doing it, then just go and do it, because you'll never find the right time. So you may as well just start it now and give it a go.
Love it. Also, it's funny because, again, I just think about, like, in the beginning when you get those introductions, hey, Keith, meet Bill, like, they might be interested. I mean, I could think back, I'm sure you can, like, those first ones you get that first year, when you see those come through, I think it's, like, usually email. And it's like you see so many emails that are, like, bullshit. Like, and then it's like this one, and you work so hard to get somebody to consider it. It's like, you get that one, you're just like, oh, and it's just like a little spark in the fire. And it's just, I can remember those first years getting those. It was just like the most exciting. Not that it's still exciting, but it's like the beginning is just, oh, we're on to something. So that was good. I like the advice too. It's true.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to sound slightly cliche, but I think these are still important points. Like, at the end of the day, the team that you have, the partners that you have, that matters a lot, because you're going to be spending entirely too much time working with these people. You obviously got to care about what you do and feel passionate about it, because you're going to be spending entirely too much time working on it, every day, every weekend. For sure, stay lean, right? In the world that I'm working in, like, I've taken full advantage of all the sort of, like, no code, low code, all these different tools that are out there that allow you to build, like, pretty basic and simple solutions for business apps. Like, as an agency, most, if you can stay out of Excel hell in file revisions, like, you've already won the game, frankly. That's where a lot of people get lost. And then value your own time, right? So I think and I'm not very good at this, but I'm kind of saying this to myself, like, one of the biggest challenges I think you face as a new company or a new founder is you get pulled in a ton of different directions. You get the intros to a million different people, and, like, frankly, you can't do all of it. You probably shouldn't do all of it. And so you got to try to be selective about where you do spend your time in order to get, obviously, the most done.
Well said. Taking care of yourself is important. Hard in those first years, I will say. I remember.
You get pulled everywhere.
Well, yeah, you got to work all the time to get it off the ground. But guys, thank you so much. I thought that was super informative. I really